enforcement agency prior to that, sir?
Prior to Athens, Clark County Police, I worked for the Oconee County Sheriff's Office in the Communications Center there.
And how long did you work with Oconee County?
Approximately 3 years.
And from when to when? When did you start there?
Started with Oconee County in December of 1996, and then I left the end of October 1999.
And you began with the department then in the fall of 1999 with Athens, Clark County?
Yes, sir.
Now, where did you grow up, sir?
Grew up in Oconee County.
And you go to high school there?
Graduated Oconee County High School.
And when did you graduate?
1996.
And following that, you went to work with Oconee County?
That is correct.
Now, tell us, as a communications administrator in charge of the 911 center, tell us about your responsibilities, if you will.
Okay. My responsibilities as administrator of the Communications Center is to manage the day-to-day operations of the center. I'm responsible for all of the staffing. I'm responsible for hiring the staffing, employment, ensuring that the center is meeting standards. It is a nationally accredited communication center through CALEA, the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. I ensure that the 911 center stays compliant with over 200 standards and best practices. Responsible for ensuring that all the equipment is operational, addressing any equipment needs, any facility needs.
And how many employees work under your supervision, sir?
37 employees.
And what kind of positions are those that work in that for the center?
Primarily communications officers. We have 3 levels in the 911 center. We have communications officers, which is the entry-level position. We have senior communications officers, communications supervisors. I have a communications training coordinator that runs our training program. We have a communications accreditation manager who also manages the department's accreditation. We also have somebody that manages our GCIC and NCIC access, so an administrative person.
And as far as that particular center, annually, about how many calls come into the center per year, sir?
Our center processes around 175,000 calls a year. Last year we processed over 136,000 emergency 911 calls. The rest of the calls would be non-emergency calls.
And in addition to those calls, do you also manage the radio calls, I guess, that come in from officers?
Yes, sir. We also dispatch for the Clark County Police Department. We also dispatch for the City of Winterville Police Department. In addition to that, we provide dispatch services for the Clark County Sheriff's Office, as well as the Athens Clark County Fire Department and the Winterville Fire Department.
Okay. Now, as far as the center itself, what does it look like, I guess, as far as the folks when they are answering calls, receiving calls, dispatching calls, and so forth?
We work in an approximately 1,600 square foot room. There are 10 dispatch consoles or positions where the dispatchers sit. Shifts typically run with 7 to 8 people per shift. There are 2 police dispatchers, one for the fire department, one for the sheriff's office. In the center of the room is a communications supervisor. They sit in the middle of the room and monitor everything that's occurring, address any needs that come up, and then the remaining staff that works answer calls as 911 call takers.
Are you familiar with the term computer-aided dispatch?
Yes, I am.
CAD.
Yes, sir.
What is that?
Computer-aided dispatch, that's the computer system that we log all activity in the 911 center. If an officer goes out on a traffic stop, we log it in CAD. If somebody calls in on 911 for emergency assistance, we would log it in CAD. The dispatcher takes the basic information, if it's a call, enters it into CAD, the location, what's occurring, and then they send it kind of like email to the right person to dispatch it. So if it's a fire call, the call is accepted into the system and then it electronically goes to somebody else who would dispatch it. If it's a call for police assistance, they would enter it into the system and again, it's sent to somebody else who dispatches it. It allows the call taker to actually stay on the line and keep gathering information.
And how do they log that in? In what manner? How do they do that?
They would get the information by talking to the caller on the phone. They would get the location and what is occurring, create a CAD event, enter it into the system, type out a narrative, and then electronically send it to somebody for dispatch.
Now, are you familiar with these mobile data terminals that officers have?
Yes, I am.
MDT.
Yes, sir.
And what are those, sir?
Mobile data terminals are computers that are mounted in the patrol cars or the fire trucks in the county. It's a computer terminal that the CAD information, when it's created in the CAD system, when that officer is dispatched to a call, the information is sent to that mobile data terminal, and it has the call location, directions to it, and then the narrative that the dispatcher has typed up.
Now, that CAD system, is that under your supervision and control as the communications administrator for the 911 center?
Yes, it is.
And is there that CAD system, when someone is logging in, is there a date and time associated with the entries?
Yes, there is.
And those date and times, what controls that clock, I guess, to indicate what date and time that would be for the CAD system?
The CAD system is synchronized with something called a net clock. Basically, is a networked clock that gets its time source from GPS, which would come from the atomic clock.
And now, how about the radio system, 800 megahertz system? Does that come under your control and supervision?
No, sir. The 800 megahertz radio system is actually operated and maintained by Howell McKinnon. He is our 800 megahertz radio system coordinator. It is a system separate from the computer-aided dispatch system. They're independent from one another.
And are they able to basically create some sort of report indicating different radio traffic?
The radio system, it is possible to produce a report showing when a radio traffic has occurred on that system.
Are you familiar with the SmartNet information management system?
Yes, sir. That's the information system for the radio system. So it has a reporting module, and that is what that would be.
And it records when radios are keyed up or somehow turned in one way or another. It had the date and time stamp as well? Yes,
that system would record any action by the radio if the radio is keyed up or transmitted, if a dispatcher keys up or transmits, if there are any actions with the radio, such as changing the radio talk group or channel, the system would log that. It maintains communication with all of our portable radios out in the field.
Is that clock at all tied to the CAD system? Are they synchronized at all?
No, sir. They're two independent systems. They do not utilize the same time source. They are not tied together.
Now, how about recordings when calls come in, whether it's 911 or whether it's radio traffic or otherwise? Those recordings, is there some sort of recording system in the 911 center that you manage?
Yes, we do have a recording system in the 911 center. It records all radio traffic, all telephone traffic that occurs in the center.
And does that have a separate clock that governs it, that indicates what times and dates certain things happen?
Yes, that system is independent also, and it has its own clock for time.
And is that clock synchronized at all with the CAD system?
It is not.
And you indicated the CAD system is tied to a net clock, which is tied to the atomic clock.
Yes, sir.
Was that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, let me go back to March 22nd, 2011, sir. Between 1 o'clock and 1:30 in the afternoon, were you working on that particular day?
Yes, I was.
And during that time, were you in the center when a call came out about an officer being shot?
I was in the administrative area of the center. I did have a radio that I was monitoring. I typically listen to my staff while they're working through a portable radio just to know what's occurring.
And what was it you heard, and what action did you take?
I heard an officer cry out that he had been shot. I immediately got up from my office and went into the 911 communication center.
And what else happened after that, sir?
After that, we had an incident where 2 officers had been injured in a shooting, and I started communicating directly with the communications supervisor and monitoring the response.
Okay. And what else did you do that day?
I helped direct the response, helped pass out information, helped review what had occurred, and helped formulate a plan on how we would process incoming tips and information.
Okay. Now, did you actually go out to any incident location that day, or did you remain in the center?
I remained in the center.
At some point after that, specifically March 30th, 2011, did you coordinate with Howard McKinnon and request a report from him for some purposes?
I did. At a later time, I asked Mr. McKinnon to run a report of all the radio traffic through the reporting system of the 800 megahertz radio system, basically a report showing when everybody had transmitted and what it and received, basically to see what had occurred traffic-wise in that system. And I asked him to retrieve a report on that.
Okay. And did he do that?
Yes, he did.
And did he print out certain pages that related to that incident there?
Yes, he did. He printed out 3 pages of a report from the radio system.
Okay. And with those 3 pages, what did you do and he do?
Got together with Mr. McKinnon. We took these 3 pages of radio traffic within a time period, and we wanted to look at when Officer Christian had been injured. We wanted to look at the radio traffic and basically compare the audio on the recording system to the transmissions on the radio system. My goal was to go line by line of all of the radio transmissions and account for them with the recording system, basically compare the 2 and line them up.
And with what he created, those 3 pages, did you write on that document and make those records simultaneously to listening to those recordings?
Yes, sir, I did. I compared the transmissions to the radio traffic and basically wrote down what had been said with the radio traffic and matched it to each transmission. And
was that document that you created there kept then in the ordinary course of your work there as the communications administrator at the 911 center?
Yes, it was. I secured it in my office and held on to it.
And are you the general custodian of certainly of that particular record?
Yes.
Okay. Let me show you, if I can, what's already been marked and displayed to the defendant as State's Exhibit 693, as well as a copy of that Exhibit 694. Sorry to be showed.
That's 693, 94. You remember seeing that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
You recognize 693, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
This is the document that we printed out. This is the actual document that we printed out of the radio system traffic, and then I made notes of each transmission.
Okay. And what you had from Mr. McKinnon on that printout from the SmartNet Management Information System, or Information Management System, what did it show?
Showed every transmission when an officer or a unit keyed up their radio. It showed every transmission of when they changed talk groups on the system or channels on the system, and then showed certain transmissions when they were received from an action on the radio.
And did you limit your review of the radio calls with those particular corresponding radio transmissions on that document?
Yes, sir, I did. I just picked a point. I was trying to account for the situation involving Officer Christian and Officer Howard. I just picked a point before that event occurred and started following the traffic there. I basically picked a point before the incident occurred and started to move down.
Let me show you what his, on 693, that document, page 20. At the top left corner, do you see basically a date and time that that document may have been created?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
That is March 30th, 2011 at 09:26 hours.
Now, under this column that has log time, you see some times as it goes through on that particular column, as well as the column that says start time.
Yes, I do.
And are those basically times accurate in this report that came from the 800 megahertz radio system?
Those times are accurate, however, they are off by 1 hour.
Okay. And compared to CAD or perhaps to the reporting times, would they be off as well?
They are slightly off because the two systems were separate from one another. They were not exactly synchronized to the second.
And over here on the right-hand side, there's a notation with a asterisk there. Who wrote that?
I did.
And what does that say for the record?
I put an asterisk and said clock was off by 1 hour due to DST, which would be daylight savings time change.
And the log time up there in the first column, in the first entry on the line there, it says 12:10:55. Was that supposed to be 1:10:55?
Yes, that would actually be 1:10:55.
Again, the minutes and seconds were or were not synchronized with the CAD as well as the radio traffic items.
Correct. The minutes and seconds were not synchronized exactly with the CAD system. They were two independent systems operating separately with different time sources, so they would not line up exactly.
As we go over here with a start time, duration, action, in particular the radio, tell us about the radio. What does that indicate as far as that radio?
Radio shows the unit number. So every officer or unit on the radio system has a unit ID. And with the police department, we have the radio number and unit ID matched up. So an officer such as 2370 would be Officer Buddy Christian, and we would have it displayed so that if he transmitted his radio in the 911 communication center, they would see that officer's radio ID. So an officer that's 2222, when he keys his radio, will say 2222, or 2370, it'll say 2370, so that they know who they're speaking to, or if the unit cannot speak, they can still see his unit ID.
If he just simply switches the channel on his radio, would that basically, or does some action on his radio, will it pop up in this system here and show that?
It will. If an officer changes his talk group, which again is the channel on the radio, it will also register that with the system. However, the column to the left that says action, it would say receive. So the radio system is receiving that he has changed that talk group on his radio.
Now, going down here further, sir, as we look at that, there are some notations down there. What is that, sir?
These are notations I made of what I could hear on the audio exactly at the time of that transmission. So I lined up the transmission and the unit number with the transmission on the radio system. So what you're seeing is what was said on the radio at that time, based on what I heard on the recording system.
And going over to the column that has, so it's displayed that shows the start time. Do you see that first entry there, sir? You
Yes,
can
I
look at
do.
your copy if you need to.
Yes, I see it.
And what was that start time?
12, 20, and 13 seconds.
And with daylight savings time on this system, it would be 1:20 and 13 seconds.
That is correct.
And basically, what was that involving 2370 or Officer Christian?
That was basically, I had noted that he answered Central, and Central is the call sign for the dispatch center. So that's not actually what he said, that's just when I started this, and I just noted that he answered Central. They had called him to give him radio traffic, and he was responding to it.
And at the next line there, what does that show?
That is Central, the dispatch center, responding to Officer Christian, telling him that they were sending him a call. $740-202 is one of our dispatch consoles in the center, and that's the dispatcher telling him, sending you a call by phone.
And the next line is what?
The next line is Central Communications saying Central 1169, so they are calling Officer 1169, which would be SPO Tony Howard, so they're calling him to raise him on the radio.
And the next entry there?
The next one is 1169 responding, so SPO Howard was responding with his 4-digit radio number. Central would call him Central 1169, and then he responded 1169.
And that would have been at 1:22.
Yes, sir, 1:22 and 18 seconds.
According to the time clock in the radio system.
That is correct.
And then what's the next entry after 1169?
The next entry is Central Communications telling 1169, are you clear about Jamie Hood possibly being at Cascades?
And is there a response from 1169?
Yes, sir. 1169 responded and said, I am now going to check the area.
And then what did Central Communications respond?
Central responded and said 10-4. 10-4 means okay. They're acknowledging him.
And this next entry, and the next entry.
The next entry are two other officers that were on that same radio talk group or channel talking to one another. So 2299 was an officer, and that's Officer Mendelar, and 2391 was Officer Michael Ward, and they were communicating with one another at the same time.
And what are these? This other one here that was indicated at 12:22 or 1:22:42 seconds. Can you swing back? What is that?
That is officers Ward and Mendelar just communicating with one another. Mendelar had called Officer Ward and then asked him, can you swing back by this way?
And that radio traffic, as we go on down, does it appear to relate necessarily to Sycamore, or do you know?
No, it does not appear to relate to Sycamore. They were just communicating with one another about a place to meet or a previous call they were on.
Let me show you, if I can, the second page, or the next page, page 21. You see that, sir?
Yes, I do.
And as it starts there, can you go through the different calls all the way down to negative?
I can.
Go ahead.
Officer Ward 2391 said thank you on the radio. Officer Mendelar 2299 then keyed back up and said 391 at your convenience. 2391 Officer Ward responded back and said 10-4, I thought you just wanted a case number. 2299 and Mendelar responded back and said negative.
And on the next line, or the next two lines,
the next transmission was 1156. 1156, which is SPO Jerry Johnson called Central Communications. He said 1156 Central, so he's calling the dispatch center.
and how did Officer Jerry Johnson respond to that?
He responded back and said, I'm sorry, he called Central, and then Central responded back and said 56.
And that initial call was at, according to this system, says 12:28:31, but it was in 1:28:31 according to the clock in the radio system.
That is correct.
And Central responded back at what time then?
Central responded back at 12:28:34 as noted by the system, which would be 1:28:34.
And the next entry after that would have been what, sir?
The next entry occurred at 12:28:36 or 1:28:36. It lasted 4 seconds. Officer Christian, 2370, transmitted on his radio, Central, I'm shot, oh my God.
how do you know that was 2370 that communicated that transmission?
Because the system logged it in as 2370. That radio was actually transmitted with his voice when I heard it at the time of that transmission.
And 2370 was logged under the radio 1 column?
Yes, sir. 2370 was logged under the radio 1 column.
And the time of that, according to this clock on this 800 megahertz system, was what?
12:28 and 36 seconds.
Or what with daylight savings time?
1:28 and 36 seconds.
We're just going to go through the next transmissions. What happened next?
That's fine. Central immediately responded and said 10-3. 10-3 is a 10 code for stop transmitting. Basically, if we have emergency traffic, we clear the channel so that nobody else speaks. Central's immediate response was 10-3, hold all traffic.
And what are these next entries here? 2481, 2240, 2384, 3370, and 3378, sir.
These are actually system receive acknowledgments. There is no radio traffic. These are units now changing their radio to the talk group that they were on. So Officer Christian's traffic occurred on our PD West talk group. So our West Side police officers talk on PD West. Other officers may be listening to the system and they may be either scanning the system. Well, they have to be scanning it to hear the traffic. They would be scanning the system, and this is them actually turning over to the PD West talk group. So once that traffic occurred and Central Communications said 10-3, hold all traffic, other units then start changing their radios to the PD West talk group to listen to the traffic.
And what was the next communication then?
The next communication occurred at 12:28 and 40 seconds, actually 1:28 and 40 seconds. It was a push-to-talk by 11:56, which was SPO Jerry Johnson. He said, units on Sycamore Drive, got a suspect running.
And the next two transmissions?
The next one was a detective, 3303. Our detectives have 3300 numbers. He was switching his radio to PD West. The following transmission came from Central Communications from the dispatcher. He said all units to Sycamore Drive. So he's telling everyone, respond to Sycamore Drive.
And the next I think 7 transmissions or 7 reports in there. What is that entries? What is that, sir?
More units changing their radios to the PD West talk group. More units changing over.
And then what's the next transmission where it says 1156?
I just noted that. That's not verbatim, but 1156 keyed up, and he asked Central Communications to get an ambulance en route for SPO Tony Howard.
That was your summary of what he was saying?
Yes, sir. That's not exactly what was spoken, but that's my summary. He was asking for an ambulance.
And the next 3 entries were?
Again, more units switching over to the PD West talk group. We have a sheriff's deputy and then 2 more Athens Clark County Police units switching over.
And what is that 10 for?
That is Central Communications acknowledging the request for the ambulance. This is all happening very quickly at one time, and the system's logging it. But this is Central Communications, the dispatcher, acknowledging the request for the ambulance.
And the next entry from 1156, sir, what is that?
1156 said, I need unit Central. It's 69. It's 1169.
And what does Central respond?
Central acknowledged the transmission, said 10-4. Again, that means okay.
And down here further, you had some that you didn't have the entries. 2456, that received. 2279 received. 2237 received. What were those?
Those are more units changing their radios to the PD West talk group.
And the next 4 entries here, sir, what are those? 2299, 2361, 2465?
Those are West Side police units acknowledging that they need units en route to Sycamore Drive, and they're basically telling the dispatcher they're en route. 2299 was saying 99's en route. Sometimes officers will just give the last half of their radio number. It's faster, keeps the channel clear, so they're just acknowledging 99's en route, 61 en route, 65's en route.
And then last, that other entry there from 1156, what is that?
1156 keyed up and said he's running around with a gun, Central.
And that was at marked at 1229.28 or 129.28.
Yes, sir, 129.28.
And these next entries that talk about receive, were those just folks keying their radio to that channel?
No, this is more units changing over to that PD West talk group. They're still switching their radios over.
Yes.
These aren't showing,
I'm sorry.
it's in,
I should have done that. I'm sorry, Jeff. And that last entry is just above where I have the page there.
Yes, so that's 1156, again keying up saying he's running around with a gun, he's running around with a gun, Central. He's running around with a gun, Central.
And these other ones here are where folks are keying up, all the receives there.
They're not keying their radios, they're actually just changing their talk groups. They're switching over to the West talk group.
Yes, sir. And the last entry that you wrote on that page at 1229.50 or 129.50, duration of 10 seconds, push to talk, 1156. What is that, sir?
excuse me, just a minute.
Yeah, I would object to this particular evidence going into the jury room with jury because it's like that continuing witness. They looking at what he's saying. He wrote this down. It didn't come off a computer. It's just like he testified. He writes his testimony on this paper. And I just thought about it, well, this didn't come off no computer. This is handmade. He wrote his wrote down now.
I understand, it's been admitted into evidence.
Yeah, and I just thought about it.
And, well, we can take up whether or not there may be things that don't go back. We can take that up at a separate time.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay?
This last entry there, sir, or last what you wrote down on this page at 1229.50 or 129.50, according to the clock with the 800 megahertz radio system, 10 seconds push to talk from 1156. What was that?
That was 1156. He said black male, white t-shirt and shorts.
And then on this last page, which was page 22, did you do any recordings on that or make any records on that in writing at all?
No, sir.
Mr. Kelly, thank you, Judge. Prior to what you wrote on the page there, that first record that you wrote, answer call, followed by sending you a call by phone, anything prior to that, did you listen to that radio traffic at all and work on that and make notations on that at all?
No, sir.
And why is that?
Again, I was trying to capture the incident or the events around SPO Christian and SPO Howard being shot. I was not trying to check any of the traffic before that. Primarily what I was looking at was the timing of those two events.
Was there traffic that occurred before that?
Yes, there was.
And were you aware that there were officers that may have been dispatched to that area earlier to look for a particular vehicle?
Yes.
Were you aware or not whether they at some point went available or went back into service?
I really didn't follow the details on that call. I know that there were transmissions before that. I can see that here, but again, I didn't go into the details of the transmissions prior to what I wrote down.
And what was recorded in the by the center, the recordings of the radio traffic, as well as any 911 calls, that would be an accurate record of what went on before and after, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Your cross-exam.
I gotta talk loud.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? I try. Y'all okay, please. I don't want to turn your fan off on you, sir. Afternoon, Mr. Kelly. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm responsible for the Athens Clark County Communications Center.
Okay, what are you, the top guy? What are you?
I'm the administrator over the center.
So, that means you the head guy. I'm trying to figure out who the head guy is to you.
I'm the administrator over the center. I report to the assistant chief and the chief. They're responsible for my operation, but I'm the administrator that manages the day-to-day operations.
Good enough. I'm like this, sir. You said you was in the center on March 22nd, 2011. You was in the center.
Yes, I was.
Okay, so you was aware about this alleged carjacking call came in from Jadon Brook, isn't that correct?
Yes, I was.
Tell us what you know about that person.
I heard a little bit of the traffic. I was in my office. I had the radio on in the background. I knew that an event had occurred, but I wasn't aware of the intimate details. I know that there had been some sort of carjacking and then some sort of situation on Lexington Road. That's about it.
I'm like so. Is it a crime to call the 911 center and give false information? Is that a crime?
It is.
Tell us what type of crime that is.
It's giving false information. If you're providing false information to the communication center, it could be considered a crime.
You was aware about this carjacking suspect, Jackie Hood. They put my name out as a suspect. You was aware of that?
I was not aware of your name specifically. I was aware that there was a carjacking suspect.
Okay. But was you aware that several officers went to Sycamore Drive looking for me as a carjacking suspect?
I knew that they were looking for a carjacking suspect. I did not know the specifics of Sycamore Drive.
So you don't. I thought you said y'all went back and y'all reviewed the radio traffic of that.
We did at a later time,
Okay.
but while the event was unfolding, I did not.
After you reviewed them tapes, who all went to Sycamore Drive looking after you reviewed them tapes?
The officers that I noted on the sheet, Officer Howard, Officer Christian was out there, and Officer Johnson.
So Officer Christian was just on Sycamore Drive on some unrelated call.
I don't know if he was or not.
But I thought you just said he was over there looking for a carjacking suspect.
I know that he was in that area is what I had said. I didn't say he was looking for a carjacking suspect specifically. There were several units out there that were looking, but again, I said that I wasn't sure which units were involved. I knew that there were several units looking for one.
Can I see the state exhibit, whatever, the new ones you got right there?
Can you narrow that down a little bit?
The one-
693
The same one he just showed him, Mr.
with the writing on it?
Yes, sir, Mr. Keith Kelly's
That'd be
exhibit.
693, which is the large one, and that way he'll still have the copy.
93.
690? It was what?
93 is here.
Okay. And 693.
Thanks, sir. Oh. You created this, who you created this with?
I created this with the radio system coordinator,
And who was that? That'd be Mr. McKinnon.
Howell McKinnon.
Mr. McKinnon.
Yes,
I noticed you got your own handwriting over there, is that correct?
that is correct.
Why didn't you let the computer print this off to them?
Because the computer's not capable of printing out radio transmissions.
But don't the computer pick up what people calling and telling them?
No, the recording system does.
Okay, well, why didn't you let the recording system put this down instead of you put your own handwriting on it?
Because this document was produced by the radio system, the recording system is a completely separate system from the radio system. It cannot print transmissions.
So you would agree this is your own perception of what you heard?
This is what I heard on the recording system and wrote down each word.
But that's on, you done that yourself, right?
That is correct.
So that's on your own perception, is that right?
It's what I heard at the time.
It's what you heard.
Correct.
Is that right? Now listen to this. Now you say you listened to that radio track, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, did it sound like that person who called 10-4 of the shot? Did it sound like the same person throughout that whole entire that play and that thing?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
When you listen at the radio traffic, 10-4, I've been shot.
Right.
Okay. You
Your Honor, I
know,
would object, that's misleading because that's not what he said. You're saying that the words are 10-4, I'm shot. That is not what's been said. It's not what he recorded.
Okay, I'll sustain that objection.
I noticed on your paper here you said, Senator, I'm shot. Senator, I'm shot. Oh my God. Can you put that on your paper?
Yes, I did.
I also know that you put suspect running. Then you put that on your paper.
Yes, I put that there was a suspect running.
Okay. Now, did it sound like that person who said 10-4 shot the suspect running? Did them sound like the same person, the same voice?
No, they did not.
It didn't sound like that to you. Somebody else perceived different. Did that correct?
Possibly.
Okay. Did y'all run a voice identification on their tape? Did you run a voice identification on their tape?
No, we don't have that capability.
But I mean, could you get somebody to come in? You could have got somebody to come in. You got enough money to get somebody to come in and investigate that.
I wouldn't even know who to call. I'm not sure that anybody's got that capability.
Well, you do have voice identification people, don't you? Isn't that right?
No.
Expert.
No, we do not.
I mean, if there's some out there you want to try to retrieve them, you could.
I don't know that. I've never looked for anybody that's capable of doing that, so I'm not sure.
Or were you looking at all and you didn't want to look?
I had no reason to look. All I was doing was writing down the transmissions.
Okay. So now, you say you reviewed them 911 tapes on March 22nd, 2011. Did you hear anybody dispatch Officer Christian over there about this carjacking call, sir?
No, Officer Christian was not dispatched on a carjacking call.
So did Officer Christian talk to Dispatcher Benjamin Paul about a carjacking suspect that day?
I don't know. I have just reviewed the traffic from this point on.
So I thought you said you the commander, you was there. You want to know if your dispatcher Paul Benjamin, what his name is? Benjamin Paul? Yeah, right here. Benjamin Paul, he was on duty that day, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so I'm asking you, did Benjamin Paul talk to Officer Christian about giving him information about what kind of call was in the carjacking?
I don't know. I haven't reviewed that part of the radio traffic.
Or you didn't want to review?
No, I haven't reviewed that part of the radio traffic.
Well, I thought you told the jury you reviewed all radio traffic for March 22nd, 2011, sir.
No, sir. I told them that I reviewed the radio traffic where I noted it on this sheet, which started on March 30th, beginning at 1:20 hours and 13 seconds. I did not review it prior to that.
You said you was in the center on March 22nd, 2011. You were aware of what was going on. Is that correct?
I was in an office in the center. I was not on the floor of the communication center.
I thought you said you had a radio on you. Is that correct?
I did have a radio on.
Well, if you had a radio on you, how you couldn't hear it?
I told you I had the radio on in the background. I wasn't listening to every transmission. I typically have the radio on the background, and if there's a transmission that occurs that strikes my attention, then I start listening. But otherwise, I'm handling administrative duties.
So are you telling us you didn't listen to what you wanted to listen to? You didn't thoroughly investigate what you're telling us?
That's argumentative and it's a compound question.
Did you thoroughly? What position you say you have? You was over everybody, is that right?
I'm the communications administrator.
Okay, you the communication administrator.
Yes,
When you think this is a very significant case,
I do.
when you think that it's significant for you to thoroughly investigate all the calls instead of just a little piece of it?
I have no reason to investigate all the calls. I have staff under me that's competent and able to handle it. They pulled the radio traffic and presented it.
Well, wouldn't it be your job to make sure your subordinates up under you make sure they do their job right? Is that right?
To a point, yes, but I can't review every single traffic and radio call that comes into our center.
So what you just review what you want to review, just a little bit of it?
In this case, I reviewed this portion of it, yes.
Okay, but you didn't investigate everything then, did you?
No, sir.
Did you talk to Officer Johnson about what he said?
No.
Why not?
I have no reason to.
You didn't, so you just want to put out what you want to put out. Then say that, sir.
All I did was did a transcription of the radio traffic at the time. I had no reasoning to talk to Officer Johnson.
But that's your version of the radio transcript, isn't that right?
Yes, this is my version of the radio traffic.
Okay. Do you know if Officer Howard told the GBI that Tony Howard, the one was on that radio, said shot fired? Do you know that?
I don't know.
Did you investigate to see and find out before you wrote what you wrote?
I'm not an investigator. All I did was transcribe the radio traffic.
Well, did you investigate? Did you call to put this down here? Do you know an investigator what you doing?
No, I did not investigate it. I transcribed the call. I wrote down what I heard from the recording system. That was as far as I went.
No further question. We took too much time on this already.
693, please. On the second page there, page 21, where it says, Central, I'm shot, oh my God. Does it indicate what radio made that transmission?
Yes, it does. It was radio with the ID 2370. The radio ID is tied to the officer. When we assign them a portable radio, we use the radio ID of their badge number.
And, sir, that transmission that wound up saying units on Sycamore Drive got a suspect running, what radio made that transmission?
That would be 1156 SPO Jerry Johnson.
Were those two different transmissions made by the same radio or different radios?
No, sir, they were made by different radios, as shown with the radio ID.
And who made the transmission and what radio, who was assigned that radio that made the transmission, Central I'm shot, oh my God?
That was radio with the ID 2370, which was SPO Buddy Christian.
Thank you, sir.
Just brief. Again, that's your own perception, right?
That's what I heard and wrote down from the audio.
But again, is that your own perception?
I don't know about perception, that's what I wrote down based on what I heard.
Okay, now, you don't know the voice on that. You didn't do no voice identification on that, did you?
I have no way to do voice identification.
No
Yes.
further question.
All right, will you excuse?
The radio call numbers here. Is that your perception or is that the system that creates who makes you call?
I can remember.
On 693.
My question relates to asking more questions. I thought you had finished. Don't misunderstand?
I was doing me direct, Judge, based on his recall.
All right.
These radio call numbers, is that your perception, sir?
No, sir, that's what the system reported. The system is showing that 2370, which is the radio ID for Officer Buddy Christian, keyed up and transmitted. That's what I heard on the recording system when that transmission occurred.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Focus. No, sir?
You may go down.
Thank you.
Can you be excused, Judge?
Yes, sir.
Excuse. Call your next witness.
State would call Detective Greg Dixon, Your Honor. Thank you.
693 is in, 695 is in, 694 is not.
That's correct, Your Honor. That was a copy of 693.
If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this court to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. If you could please have a seat, pull up to that microphone, state your name, and spell your name for the record.
Greg Dixon. Spelling of the first name is Greg. Spelling the second Dickson.
And sir, how are you employed?
I'm a detective for the Athens Clark County Police Department, assigned to the Domestic Violence Unit
And how long have you been an employee of the Athens Clark County Police Department?
for 11 years.
And back on March 22nd of 2011, where were you assigned?
To the same unit.
Okay. And back on March 22nd, 2011, do you recall, what do you recall happening that day?
That morning, I started my day off preparing for a trial in this courtroom, the state court. Went through the entire morning into the middle of the day, breaking for lunch, and trial ended. And then I returned to the office sometime around the lunch hour.
And where was your office located at that time?
It's at 3035 Lexington Road here in Clark County.
And is that on the east side of town?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And did something happen when you went back to your office on the east side of Athens?
Yes, I had my police radio with me since I had been out on the road coming back from the courthouse, and was not monitoring the radio traffic 100%, but I did hear what appeared to be a sound of an officer in distress.
Okay. And based on that, what did you do?
I ran to a police car and began driving to the west side of town towards Sycamore Drive.
Okay. And when you arrived on scene, what did you encounter?
When I arrived on scene, I found multiple Athens Clark County police cars, some Clark County Sheriff's police cars as well, a lot of law enforcement personnel in the area.
And did you actually make it down to the actual scene on Sycamore Drive where this occurred?
No, sir, I did not.
What were you doing?
When I arrived into the area, I noticed a lot of, like I said, a lot of law enforcement personnel. I got out of the car that I was in, approximately 100 yards down Sycamore Drive from the intersection of West Broad and Sycamore, knowing that there was still possibly a suspect on foot in the area. I began to search dumpsters, trash cans, vehicles, anywhere that a person could be hiding.
At some point, did you notice an ambulance leaving that area?
Yes, I did.
And were you aware of who was in that ambulance?
Yes, I was.
And what did you do based on that ambulance leaving?
The knowledge I had at that time is that that was Officer Tony Howard being transported to Athens Regional Medical Center. I left the area of Sycamore Drive to go to Athens Regional Medical Center to assist in any way with the investigation there.
Okay. And what did you do when you arrived at Athens Regional Medical Center?
When I got there, Officer Howard had already been taken into a room. They were medical personnel were treating him. They were swarming around him, whatever treatment that he needed. Stayed in that area momentarily, and then I ended up collecting Officer Howard's uniform that had been removed from him when he arrived at the hospital.
Did you have a camera with you that day?
No, sir, I did not.
Were you able to take any photographs?
No, sir.
Were you expecting to need a camera that day?
No, sir, I did not.
How would you describe the scene when you got this call, your reaction to it?
It was chaotic. The only word that I could give for it.
Okay. In regards to the uniform that you collected, where was that uniform?
It was in the same room next to Officer Howard's bed that he was in place. I requested a brown paper bag, or just a paper bag in general, from the staff at the hospital, and they provided me one to place his uniform and his boots into.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 696 and ask if you could take a look at that for me. And without displaying it to the jury, could you tell me what State 6, if you could just go back up to the stand for a second, I want to ask you a couple questions. What does State 696 appear to be?
This is a property receipt for evidence from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
Is that one 697? Marked as 697?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, underneath 697, do you see something marked as 696?
Yes, sir.
And what does 696 appear to be?
It's a brown paper bag.
Okay, I'm going to ask if you, without showing to the jury, if you could please take a look inside of State 696.
Is that 696 or 697?
696 is attached to the bag, and 697 is attached to a document that was attached to 696. Detective Dixon, do you recognize the contents of State's Exhibit 696?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what does State 696 appear to be?
That is the uniform of Officer Howard that I collected at ARMC.
And does it appear to be the uniform that you collected on that day of March 22nd, 2011?
Yes, sir, it is.
State would move to admit State's Exhibit 696 at this time.
Objection.
No, sir, Your Honor.
Once you collected his uniform, Officer Howard's uniform, what did you do with it?
I returned to the scene at Sycamore Drive and made contact with Agent Spurlock from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and turned those items over to him as evidence.
Those are all the questions I have, Detective Dixon. Please answer any questions that the defendant might have.
Yes, sir.
I don't have no question.
Move excuse.
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Excuse. Thank you. Next witness.
They would call Special Agent Jonathan Spurlock. If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this court to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Please have a seat. Pull your chair up to that microphone. If you could state your name and spell your name for the record.
Jonathan Spurlock, JONATHANSPURLOCK.
And sir, if you could please tell the jury, where are you employed?
With the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
And what do you do for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
I am assigned to the Atlanta Regional Field Office as a special agent, and I'm attached over to the Social Security Administration Office of Inspector General.
How long have you been employed by the Georgia Bureau of Investigations as a special agent?
As a special agent since March of 2007.
Okay. Back on March 22nd of 2011, where were you assigned as a special agent for the Georgia Bureau of Investigations?
I was assigned to the Atlanta Field Office located in Conyers.
And did you have, have a reason to come out to Athens, Georgia, specifically to Sycamore Drive back on March 22nd of 2011?
Yes, sir.
And why did you come to Clark County on that day?
I responded to Clark County that day to that address at the direction of my supervisor as a result of the shooting that occurred, and myself and another agent were dispatched to come out here to assist.
Okay. And when you arrived, did you report into anyone?
One of the supervisors on duty on the scene.
Okay. And what specifically did you do on March 22nd, 2011?
After I arrived on the scene and met with the supervisor, I was instructed to meet with Detective Dixon for the purpose of obtaining a uniform from him so that we could take it into custody for evidentiary purposes.
Okay. And where did you meet with Detective Dixon?
On the Sycamore Drive.
Okay. And where did he have that uniform?
He had it stored in the trunk of his vehicle.
Okay. And did you retrieve what he had stored?
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State Exhibit 696 and 697. State 696, do you recognize that item?
Yes, sir.
And what is State 696?
It is a brown bag that was containing the uniform that belonged to Officer Tony Howard.
And is that the bag that you collected from Officer Dixon on March 22nd, 2011?
Yes.
And State 697, what is State 697?
That is a GBI receipt for property, evidence receipt.
And who filled that out?
I did.
And what is that for?
For chain of custody purposes for evidence in this case.
And what was the evidence that you collected?
I collected, as it is stated, might not refer to a copy, so I need to read that.
Would that help refresh your